Hi, and welcome back to the F Word. I'm your host and racing driver, Daniela Sutton, and I'm exploring the world of extremely fast females. This episode, I'm delighted to welcome another extremely fast female, who is the only woman in the world to hold two sailing world records at one time. So, welcome to the show, Zara Davis.
Thank you very much.
Everybody back at home watching, can you please give a quick summary on who you are and what you do?
So, I'm Zara Davis. So I was for a long time the fastest woman in the world on a windsurfer, both at 500 meters and a mile distance. So we have different distances in speed sailing. So that might be 500 meters, a mile, and then we would go to much longer distances in sailing, like around the world or across the Atlantic or something like that. In windsurfing, obviously not really around the world sport, we tend to stick to the shorter distances. And I broke my first world record in 2006. And that was the mile. And then in 2012, I managed to also capture the 500-meter record. Hence, I was the first woman or man, actually, to hold both of those records at the same time.
Well, it must be quite exciting, and I'm quite intrigued by your accomplishments. And it's super impressive that you happen to be the only female in the world to achieve two world records in sailing at once. And as you said, female and man as well, which must be quite exciting in a world of sport. And what actually led you to believing that you could strive for these achievements?
That was an odd one, really. I didn't really know I could. I started windsurfing when I was a kid with my father, and then gave up for a long time because I was a little bit poorly. And then picked it up again with my first job in Milton Keynes, of all places, in the local lake, because my boss windsurfed, and I thought, I'll meet some people if I go windsurfing. I met my husband, and he was a speed sailor, and I sort of learned quick, got fast, and started speed sailing quite seriously. Went to the World Championships, did much better than I expected. And then started competing on the world circuit. But I still had a full-time job. I ran my own business, my own healthcare business, and I didn't really have the opportunity to train as much as I would have liked. I was racing against, professional and semi-professional women and girls, and but I did have a big advantage. I'm tall and reasonably heavy. Long levers, and that does help. And traditionally, women in windsurfing have been smaller. A lot of the disciplines in windsurfing actually require you to be small and mobile, and speed sailing doesn't. So I guess I had a sort of physical advantage. It's difficult to say. I was just naturally quite good at it. My grandfather used to race motorcycles. My father and my brother were both rally drivers, and I guess speed was in my blood. So, and I just love the water.
Well, speed's in my blood as well. And I said on a previous podcast to Mandy Hickson, who's ex-RAF fast jet pilot, that speed's actually in my blood. I wanted to be a RAF pilot, but because I have juvenile arthritis, I couldn't. But I can't complain because I'm now a racing driver, which is just, if not cooler than, in my opinion, than being a fast jet pilot. So obviously we have setbacks. You said you were ill for quite a while, which is when you gave up your sailing and your surfing. Obviously, I have juvenile arthritis, which means that sometimes it can be quite tough for me when I'm racing, and I just have to push through that and persevere and stay with determination inside me, and just think about the end goal and look at how far I've come from when I was bedridden or admitted to hospital, to now racing in cars at a high level, and hopefully looking to pursue that in the future as a career. And in racing, there's different like track conditions and everything. So it can be wet or it can be cold or slippery. It might not be raining, but it can be greasy. So it can be quite hard to deal with those conditions. I'm sure it's the same for you in sailing and surfing. How do you deal with the treacherous conditions on open waters? And have you had to make any sacrifices when dealing with like stormy weather, or how does that work?
We're in my sport, we're the biggest problem we have is, well, two big problems. Wind. We need wind. If you're going to go fast, unlike you've got a nice engine under you, put your foot down, you go forwards. Presumably there's fuel in it. But actually that isn't the case for us, so we can turn up. Already we've flown 250 kilograms worth of gear, halfway across the world. We've dragged it, put it on a boat, dragged it to some bleak beach somewhere where nobody else goes because it's windy and in the middle of nowhere, and it's not windy for 2 weeks. So there's a lot of waiting around for the right wind conditions. So we need good wind and we need flat water. So we're looking for offshore wind conditions. So we want the wind to be going away from the shore so that the water off the beach is flat. So that either means a natural beach. In some places, the place where we set the mile record tends to be a natural beach. Originally, it was in Walvis Bay in Namibia, and now the records are held in the south of France, actually. Very natural, straight beach. Wind comes off the mountain. It's a cold, strong wind. And it comes off the beach at about 120-ish degrees to the angle of the beach, and that's what we're looking for. For the 500-meter record, pretty much all of the national records and certainly the world records are held in a trench that we dig in Namibia, again, in a place called Luderitz. And my husband's there at the moment. He's the commissioner for the world record attempt this month. And so we basically dig a hole in the sand, fill it up with water. It's just inside the envelope of the beach, partly because of the seaweed and the birds and the ecology and the natural stuff. So we've dug it in some hard sand a little bit further up. I wouldn't say it's always windy, but it's predictably windy. As big storms come around Cape Horn and they influence the wind in South Africa and therefore Namibia and Luderitz. So we're looking for wind. We're aiming for 500-meter world records. We're looking for 50 knots of wind. So that's 60 plus miles an hour of wind. You're definitely not looking for that. And we want it to be as consistent as possible. So we call it laminar as possible, because the more consistent the wind is, the more likely you are to be able to maintain your speed over water. Because we don't have the advantage of an engine, the skill really in keeping your speed over 500 meters, which is the discipline, is trying to maintain as even a speed as possible. It's no good going really, really fast and then really, really slowing down, and then going really, really fast again and then really, really slowing down. So the idea is that you try and maintain your speed, and the more even the wind is, the better. The flatter the water is, the better. And then your board, you have less drag. So much like your tires, you put knobbly tires on your race cars, they're going to go slower because they grip the tarmac more. Well, it's exactly the same. If we have a bobbly surface, we don't actually change the board or the fin, the bit that sits in the water. But we need a smooth surface. The smoother that surface, the more like slicks it is, the faster we'll go. So we like glide across. There's not much of the board in the water. Actually, only probably the last foot, and then the fin, which gives us lateral resistance. Definition of sailing is wind powered with lateral resistance in the water. So we need a fin that stops us sliding sideways and aims us going forwards in the most efficient way possible. But the fin needs to be quite small. I mean, most of our fins are 19 to 20 centimeters long, so we haven't got a lot in the water. There's not a lot to stop you skimming off into the sand on the other bank.
Well, that sounds quite exciting. So it's obviously a lot more technical than what meets the eye for sailing then, because you were mentioning about the different fins that you can have and whatever. Like in car racing, we have different setups, so we can change like the stiffness of the suspension and the position of the ride height and the position of the tires and everything. That's quite interesting to know that, and give an insight to everyone watching or listening, that it's a lot more than meets the eye in every sport there is.
I
And
think
it's
that's
quite,
absolutely true. I think sailing's more technical than you think, and speed sailing, we're using some of the things to drive us forward. That, for instance, you might be using, maybe not you quite yet, but if you think about the rear wings in Formula One, they're giving downforce so that you can hold the car on the tarmac as you go round a corner. So that technology to hold the car down is actually sucking us forward with our sail. So we have something, a sail that looks like an aeroplane wing, if you like, and that's how we're propelled. We're not pushed along; we're actually sucked along, and our fins are doing the same thing in the water. So our fins are asymmetric. They're not the same profile both sides. So the idea is they give you lift one side, but the minimum amount of drag the other side. So it's very, but there's a limit to the amount of technology. Partly, probably, at least initially, because there's a limit to the amount of money. We're a very low-moneyed sport in comparison with motor racing. But even then, there's few components really to our kit in comparison with a motor car or even a kart.
yeah. So with that, obviously you said there's like a limit to what you can do to the actual setup. So as a, would you call yourself a sailor? As a sailor,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. As a sailor, would you like work on yourself and your fitness as well to enhance what you're doing on the waters?
Yes, definitely. So you want there's some things you can't change. You can't change your height, but you can change your weight. So you can be heavier, but obviously you don't really want to be heavy fat, because then you're not nimble. So you want to be heavy, full of muscle if you can be, because then you've got the ability to shift that weight around to alter the ride height of the nose of the board, to put some pressure on the fin in different ways, to load the sail when the gust comes and you need to hold that sail down, because of course as soon as it's lifted you lose the power. So certainly being strong makes a massive difference. There's a huge difference between men and women in sailing.
Mhm.
Absolutely vast. And at the end I'm at, if you like, the cheaper end of sailing, the difference is vast. So the difference between the men's record and the women's record is about 6 knots, so
Mhm.
10 mile an hour. We're not close. And you can argue, it's frustrating as a woman to be in that position because you want to be as quick as the men. But it's never going to happen. We're never going to be as big. We're never going to be as strong. We're never going to have the leverage. We're never going to have the pulling power. But all of that, obviously, you want to maximize. So a lot of gym work. I do a lot of balance work, a lot of body weight training, and and quite a lot of eating, because which is good. I've picked a sport where I can eat. That's good.
Yeah.
Because as I say, in my sport, it helps to be heavy, so you don't want to be losing weight as you're training. So, and also certainly for the mile, you're looking at about a minute and a half. It doesn't sound very long to you guys, but about a minute and a half in full maxed out, absolutely concentrated performance. And then you've got to get your kit out of the water, up a steep beach. You've got to walk about 500 meters against 50 knots of wind to put your gear in a van to drive back to do it again. And you're probably doing that for 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
So you need to be cardiovascularly fit, as well. So at the top end of the sport, it's physically hard and mentally very draining, because the concentration, make a mistake, much like yourself, and the consequences for both kit and body are can be severe.
Well, of course, you mentioned that obviously it's quite mentally straining. I know that racing and being fast can be mentally straining in whatever you're doing, because obviously it's your area of expertise in motorsport. If you have a healthier body, a fitter body, then your mind's going to be able to deal with a lot more pressure, because you're not having to worry about the fatigue that's being shown on your body. You can just persevere with whatever you're doing and hopefully reach for the best. Um, Even though obviously sometimes people have setbacks, whatever it is, like you might have a fitness setback or a medical condition, and you have to keep going and persevering and overcome those challenges. Um, have you ever experienced like any specific setbacks that you've had to overcome?
Oh yes. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is injury racing. So just as I was hitting my peak, I just broken the world record in 2006. And then in 2007, same place. I managed to come off my board with the foot trapped in the foot strap, and I broke most of my foot really. And of course you're in Africa, in the middle of nowhere, so that's not ideal really. So so it took me 21 days before surgery, and then I had 16 weeks non-weight bearing in plaster. And then of course you've got to come back from there, so you need to get fit again. And I did go to the World Championships that summer, so I did it in probably the October, would have been late October time, in Africa, in Namibia, and the following July was the World Championships, and I did enter and I did start, but the foot didn't hold up. I had to stop. So yeah, that was probably the lowest. I've been injured quite a few times. Had a disc surgery in my neck and a few various other wounds and bits and pieces, but nothing that has kept me out for as long as that, and has been such a long recovery, because you end up with a little withered stick leg. And it was my left foot, which is my back foot, the one that trims the fin at the back. So it's really important that you know where it is in space. The proprioception is good. You know if you've pointed your toe, that you have pointed your toe, and learning all of that again took a long time. So yeah, it took a little while to get back from that. So I think in sport we all have setbacks. The challenge is to go, okay, this isn't the end. I'm gonna fight back from this, and if you have time on your side a little bit, because obviously there's age parameters and sponsorship parameters and other bits and pieces. I think if you have some time on your side, just keep working at it. Take all the advice, get all the treatment, get a personal trainer, take all the supplements, and actually, if you work hard enough, it will come good. You can get better from almost everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And I have juvenile arthritis, so I use my racing as kind of my goal and my I don't know, my aim to get better. So if I've had a rough time with my arthritis and I've been in hospital, in and out of hospital on an IV drip with prednisolone steroids and that can make me gain weight, and weight in motorsports can be quite crucial.
It's not good for you, is it? No.
So obviously, like, I've then worked hard on my fitness. I've come back fighting, and I think that's sports a very, very interesting, very helpful thing for someone with my condition, and other people with other conditions out there in the world. It's definitely something that can give someone determination to keep going. Just like you with your sailing, that was your will to keep going. You wanted to get back out there sailing and surfing again, and that's the same with me and my racing, really.
And I think an inspiration, I hope you tell other young people that you've got juvenile arthritis, and look where you are. And not everybody wants to be a racing driver, but for some people, being able to get to the shops or to ride a bicycle, or whatever their goals might be, they can see your goals and be inspired to think, actually I can be as well as this. Keep working at it, keep fighting, keep moving forwards. It's a tricky condition because it's like a lot of these autoimmune type conditions, they're unpredictable. And of course, stress makes them worse.
Yeah.
So, if you put, you have to manage that side of your health very well, I would imagine, because obviously, all sports at high level is stressful. But motorsports, such a mental game as well, that trying to keep your stress levels at an even keel is is so important for your sport and for your condition. So if you can manage that better, I'm sure that your arthritis then doesn't flare up perhaps quite so much or quite so bad.
Yeah, I've been told by like my consultant at the hospital, at Old Day Children's Hospital. I've been told that a lot of children with my condition, once they get it, they kind of lose their motivation to do anything, and that's not great because the muscles, the more you strengthen the muscles around the joint, if you do have a flare up, the more the joint is kind of cushioned,
Yeah.
and you won't get the same day-to-day soreness as you would if you just sat there and done nothing. So I think that my motorsport is definitely very good for my health.
Yeah, and also having a positive outlook on life, makes such a difference, doesn't it? As I say, whether it's, for you, it's the motorsport, but whatever it is, if you feel positive about whatever you're trying to achieve, then, you've got something to look forward to. And it's a miserable condition. It's a painful condition. And, if you can fire yourself up mentally, then that is a good way to start the physical thing keeping itself healthy as well.
Yeah, so actually I know that you're an osteopath and
That's why I know
acupuncturist.
so much about
You know
it.
so much about it. Why did you get into that, may I ask?
Why did I get into osteopathy?
Yeah.
So I was originally in microbiology in a big hospital, which I really didn't enjoy. I think people like us are driven. Even if we don't realize it, and I don't know how old you are, but I was in my early 20s, and I was I was just too driven to work in an institution like the NHS. I really needed to run my own business. But actually, I really loved healthcare, and I was going to do medicine, and decided that I didn't think it was for me. I looked around for something that gave me healthcare, but enabled me to run healthcare as I wanted to run it, as I saw how it should be run. So I started osteopathy, and I loved it from the minute I started. I was lucky. I was good at it, but partly you're good at stuff because you love it, don't you? I studied hard, I worked hard, and I ended up 30 years later running a big multidisciplinary health centre with 20 therapists and, a whole mixture of people all working together, really delivering healthcare how I think it should be delivered, which is as a patient-centred whole approach, rather than separating each little bit into tiny factions, which, I understand there's reasons for that within the NHS. But once you start, one doctor dealing with one thing, and then another hospital dealing with another, and then another one dealing with another, it's very difficult to get joined up thinking. So within my clinic, you could see several people, and we all talked together because we all worked together, and it was really great. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It was hard to mix work and sport. I was lucky, I guess. I was the boss. So if I needed to take 6 weeks off and sit by a canal in Lüderitz in the wind, I could do it with notice, as long as my patients knew I was going. But it was much more difficult to do something the next day. So, you look at the weather forecast and go, it's windy tomorrow, I'll go and train tomorrow. No, I've got patients booked in. So as long as I knew a month in advance, then I could go. I managed to combine, very luckily, a great career, a really great career. I loved it. Fantastic colleagues, fantastic patients, lovely clinic to work in, and top level sport. So I was super lucky.
Yeah, that's great. And for me now, I hope to be a racing driver, somehow make a career out of that, just as you've got your career in osteopathy, and as well as your career in your sports, in your sailing and your windsurfing, which is really quite inspirational, and should be an inspiration to young girls and young people hoping to make a path for themselves for the future. And it's been very amazing to have you on this podcast and have you join me. And hopefully, it will provide an insight to the dedication that extremely fast females have to provide in their area of expertise. And hopefully they can gain some just motivation from the stories that we've both shared today. And this is the F word. And thank you for listening, and see you all next time.